Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sip and Tip. As I said, we are talking a lot about health this year. So today I have a special guest who is a registered homeopathic practitioner. So he's going to explain to us what that is, and we are going to get into the topic of what we are discussing. And for the first episode with Richard, we will basically talk about just a few illnesses, mainly mental health, and how what kind of foods we should be eating to stay healthy in those areas. So welcome to the show, Richard.
Thank you for hosting me.
Thank you for coming. So you are a homeopathic practitioner. I've never heard of that. Maybe I have, but I never paid attention to it. What is a homeopathic practitioner?
Well, a homeopathic practitioner is a primary healthcare practitioner who treats both the disease and the person with the disease. Then he uses natural substances to treat the person with the disease. And also he embraces the healing power of nature, what we call the vis medicatrix natura, whereby it's not just a matter of treating the disease, but treating the whole person. So he takes what we call the holistic approach, whereby we look at the psychological aspect, the emotional, the spiritual, the soul, and the physical body. So we treat the whole person rather than just treating the disease.
Wow. That's quite, it actually sounds like it's more complicated than what a doctor would do. Is that true?
Well, an ordinary doctor just treats diseases, whereas a homeopathic practitioner treats both the disease and the person suffering from the disease. It's a bit complicated.
Sounds like the same thing. What's the difference between treating the disease and the person? Is it not the same thing?
It's different. Let's say we are suffering from a headache. You have a headache and I have a headache. When we visit the medical doctor, perhaps he prescribes painkillers to suppress the pain. But when you visit a homeopathic practitioner, you try to identify the true cause. What's causing your headache? Is it that because you are dehydrated? Perhaps you have been not taking water for the past 2 weeks. And maybe he asked me about my headache. Perhaps it's just an allergy, or it's because of mental stress. So instead of suppressing the pain, he addressed the true cause.
Right. So it basically digs much deeper than just giving you medication to treat.
Rather than just suppressing the symptoms, he tries to address the root cause.
Okay, to actually de-root the sickness. That sounds very thorough.
It's thorough. Even the
job.
consultation itself, it takes about 2 hours. The first initial consultation, whereas a medical doctor perhaps is just about 15 minutes or so.
True. So basically, if I go into your office and say I have like a toothache, for example, I'm going to be in there for 2 hours because you will find out what
really caused the toothache. Perhaps there are some...
the way you eat.
Yes.
Is it...
Some underlying health conditions.
And doctors don't have time for that.
Yes.
So does that mean that your charges are actually much higher than a doctor's?
Under normal circumstances, the charges are supposed to be more than for the general doctor. Yeah, but considering our environment, sometimes our charges are very, very low.
Well, I guess it's an advantage to Zimbabweans to have people like yourself. Of course, I suppose there's people in your practice who still stick to their high charges.
Well, in Zimbabwe, we are now fortunate that we have quite a number of natural health practitioners. And in other countries, like overseas countries, sometimes it's not affordable to consult a homeopathic practitioner or a naturopathic physician.
I can imagine. Just like how in other countries, it's impossible unless you are filthy rich to even have a maid or a gardener.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we've spoken about the difference between you and a doctor. What about traditional healers? Because, traditional healers seem also like there are people who use herbs and maybe even spiritual, methods, which I don't know if you are into that, but what's the difference between you and a traditional healer?
Well, traditional healers are more into using herbs, the traditional herbs, perhaps from the knowledge which they gather from their ancestors or from the spiritual consultations.
Okay,
and
it's
the
not
like.
textbook knowledge.
It's not something that is scientific, and is homeopathic practitioners. It's actually a science. So science can be proved. Unlike the traditional healers, sometimes you cannot prove that you have a sickness as a result of some spiritual cases also.
Okay, I see what you mean. Would you what as a homeopathic practitioner? Obviously, you. What I want to know is, what do you think about people who actually seek traditional help from healers? Is it something that you would advise as too risky, or do you think it has its own uses?
I can't say it's risky because traditional healers have their place. Because when we say a human being, it's not just the physical being, there's a spiritual being. So such spiritual being is actually something that is supernatural. A homeopath cannot go beyond the physical, and a medical doctor cannot go beyond something that is physical, but perhaps a traditional healer or a prophet can go beyond that to the supernatural levels.
That makes sense.
So they have a place, or they have a role to play, especially in addressing health issues and social issues in our society.
So basically, as somebody who also works with herbs, what do you think about us just relying solely on medical doctors, on the medicines and the tablets and the what? Is there, if someone was to live their life only using that source for their health and their illnesses, is it inadequate, or?
Well, it's like 75% of the medicines that are used by the medical doctors is derived from plants. 75%. Then the 25% is synthetic, meaning it's chemical, right? So the fact that they are natural herbs, it doesn't guarantee their safety. So we can not say we can rely on herbs only, then we shun the chemical drugs, because chemical drugs have a role to play in our health systems and in our lives, as well as even herbs and food. So we have to take a sort of to comprehend, or to I can say, to welcome all the systems in our society or in the health sectors. So we cannot solely rely on herbs. We also need the chemical drugs at some point.
Okay. So, there's obviously a lot of illnesses. Some illnesses tend to be, in a way, territorial, in that maybe in Africa, this disease is more common than it is in the West, etc., things like that. So, what have you found, particularly in Zimbabwe, that seems to be the main illnesses that people suffer from?
Well, in men, the main issue is to do with prostate enlargement. They also call it benign prostatic hyperplasia. Then in women, mainly it's an issue of hormonal imbalances. So I can attribute all these to our lifestyle and our diet.
Hormonal imbalances, is that the term, like that women suffer from a condition called hormonal imbalances, or is it there various diseases underneath
Well,
that?
there are various diseases under hormonal imbalances. Diseases such as uterine fibroids, fertility issues, or heavy menstruation, and missing some periods, and the issue of mood swings. All these are related to hormonal imbalances, including skin conditions. They are linked to hormonal imbalances. Then when it comes to men, the issue of benign prostatic hyperplasia is also linked to hormonal imbalance.
I've also found in my research that breast cancer seems to be the most common cancer amongst Black women. Would that include Zimbabwe as well?
Well, breast cancer not only affects women, it can also affect men.
Men as well.
Yes. So, well, it might be true that Black women are affected mostly with the issue of breast cancer because one, there are issues of contraceptives. Contraceptives are said to reduce cases of ovarian cancer, but at the same time increase the risk of breast cancer. Then there's also an issue of using cosmetics, because most of these cosmetics are preserved with paraben, which interferes with hormones. There's also an issue of using pesticides, like in our gardens, in our fields, we use pesticides, we use chemical fertilizers, so they interfere with our hormones.
Even some vegetables or fruit that we buy in the market, we don't always know whether they were
Very
treated
true.
with pesticides.
Most of them are laced with pesticides.
And how do we know?
You can't even know because you buy it from a supermarket, then maybe 2 weeks ago it was sprayed with chemicals or with very toxic substances which can actually interfere with your hormones. Then you end up with hormonal imbalances, you end up with things such as breast cancer, and also the use of those bras, the second-hand bras. That's another.
Wow.
It exposes women to the issue of breast cancer because of that stuff. We call it formaldehyde. Yeah, it exposes women to issues of breast cancer.
So it's not advisable for people to, because as we know in Zimbabwe, bales are very common now. People are selling secondhand clothes like seriously, like now, like never before. So you are saying that it is not advisable for people to buy secondhand underwear.
Yes, secondhand
underwear meaning bras, panties.
and panties. Yes, especially bras.
Even boxers for men.
Even boxers. So it's always good to buy clothes made from, especially cotton, and not from the stuff or the foam rubbers, the like, because there's formaldehyde which can actually cause cancer.
Wow. So this also includes even like athletic wear, like, you know, trainer bras, all of that stuff, because these are still things that you buy secondhand, that some people buy secondhand. So it's not advisable to do that. We've heard from the professional advice. That's really interesting to know because I never knew that. I have to say that I am somebody who looks for a good bargain. Sometimes I've definitely, on many occasions, bought something that was secondhand because it was more affordable. I bought it in a place that was clean, etc. So you think you have enough justifications to do it, but if you don't have knowledge, you won't know that you're still putting yourself at risk.
Very true. Knowledge is power. And also the other issue is on food. Our diet as Africans is more inclined to the Western. So, like I always say, what we eat can be the slowest form of poison. So, our diet, especially the highly processed foods, the commercial beverages, carbonated drinks, they expose us to such conditions.
Okay, so I think that there's a lot to discuss when we actually get into specifically discussing the diseases, which we will do shortly. But what I want to know, because we had started a train, we had hopped on a train of mental health, and we only so far just have a few episodes with our psychiatrist. which we will be showing. But I really wanted to know, when it comes to our mental health, is this something that herbs and diet can actually help avoid or treat? Because we usually all we hear is counseling and psychotherapy, all of that stuff. But does our diet and the things that we consume and stuff actually assist when it comes to our mental health?
Well, food is the greatest medicine that we have to address most of our health conditions, including mental health issues, because certain foods may cause issues like depression, anxiety, and other mental problems. And then we can also address such conditions with either herbal medicines or even food. And also, like I mentioned earlier on, a homeopathic practitioner or a natural therapist also embraces modalities such as psychotherapy, counseling to address mental health issues.
Okay. So, what are some of the ways? What is the diet that you should have when you are thinking about, say, for example, look, whether you are suffering from mental health or you're not suffering from mental health, what are some of the things that you have to consider eating if you haven't already got knowledge on this?
There are certain foods that are good for your brain, because when it comes to mental health issues, it's a matter of brain chemicals. So you can embrace foods that are rich in omega-3 fatty acids, such as nuts, such as avocados. They are good for your brain. All types of nuts, be it our ground nuts, that's nzungu, almond nuts, Brazilian nuts, cashew nuts, they are good for your brain. So you can take such foods. And also in terms of depression or even issues such as insomnia or panic attacks, you can take what is known as catnip. That's a very good tea to address issues of anxiety, depression, and other.
How do you get that?
Catnip, you can just find it in your garden. It's just a plant, so you can make tea out of catnip. It's very effective in terms of addressing your brain chemicals, in terms of addressing even insomnia.
What about chamomile tea?
Including chamomile tea. It can also even calm your nerves, your central nervous system. So you can also embrace chamomile tea and catnip.
Okay, so basically, the funny thing is that yes, in our culture, there are certain herbs that people use and whatever, but I think there's a level, where you start talking about certain things like mental health and stuff. It's like now, like we don't. Why do you think in our culture we don't take it that seriously? We don't actually have. You never hear somebody saying, "Take this, take this powder, take this food for your mental health." It's always just fertility, or why is it that we seem to have we are equally affected just like everyone else in the world, yet for some reason we don't vocalize, we don't seem to take things like mental health very seriously? Why do you think that is?
Well, it's very unfortunate that in our society, most people, they don't recognize things such as depression, anxiety, or even stress, because they don't take it as a disease or as a condition that may require treatment. Whereas in the Western countries, they actually take mental health as something that is serious. So we slightly have our own way of addressing issues such as depression, such as grief, but it's done culturally. Take, for example, when your close relative passed, that process of funeral where they do chirora, where they play the drums, they do some dances, it has a healing modality on its own.
Really?
Yes, to address issues of depression and the like. So Africans have their own way of addressing depression, which perhaps the Western are not even aware of.
I've actually even tied any of those practices that are done to the healing, to contribute, that it contributes to the healing, to the mental health of someone. And I really had no idea about that. It's interesting to know. So what do you think can be done, like for people to actually become more aware? Of course, you've mentioned the things that people need to drink and eat. We talk a lot about the food that we're supposed to consume for mental health.
Well, what is supposed to be done is an issue of doing some campaigns, and so that people become aware that mental issues exist. Depression is real, because in most cases, like in my practice, I come across people with issues of depression, but they come with a complaint of a physical illness such as a migraine headache or with high blood pressure. But when you try to dig in, you will realize that no, this is depression or it's panic attacks or some sort of a mental issue. So it's very important to educate our people so that they know mental issues exist, and such mental issues may end up manifesting as physical illness. So sometimes you might have a migraine headache for 5 years, but the underlying cause is a mental issue.
I know personally in my life, the times that I've suffered from, there are specific times that I know that I had depression. And it's only when you look back that you realize that, hey, I had a flu that lasted weeks, or I had and then I look at what was going on in my life at that time, and I'm like, I've never had that before, but I was going through all of these difficult things. And then for the first time, I had a flu that lasted 3 weeks. And you realize that no, it was actually connected to like depression, because my mind was completely bogged down, and it's not normal for me to be sick in that way, So I guess in some ways you think it's possible for you to actually self-diagnose yourself. Like if you look at yourself and you're wondering, there's certain things that occur in my life that don't make sense, certain sicknesses or certain, things. Are you able to actually do a self-diagnosis, Kuti, and find that you actually are depressed or you have some kind of a mental?
In most cases, it's difficult to do self-diagnosis because when someone has a mental illness, they are in a denial mode. Someone who is depressed may say, no, I don't have depression. You see?
Because of the stigma as well. Yeah,
there's an issue of stigma, and also there's an issue whereby your body sometimes hide that depression in the subconscious mind. So you pretend as if everything is well, is fine, but the problem is hidden on the subconscious mind.
Okay. So just to end off this topic of mental health, if I was to walk into your office today and with the symptoms that I had, and you diagnosed me with mental health problems, what would you advise me? What would you give me? What would be the solution?
Well, when it comes to issues of mental health, in most cases, as I indicated, they manifest as physical illness. So perhaps you'll be coming to my office complaining of a migraine headache or of issues such as high blood pressure or other health issues that are physical. So it's very important now to dig in and identify the true cause. When it comes to the issue of mental health, it's more important to do what is called psychotherapy or counseling. There are professionals who are trained in counseling, in psychotherapy.
So you would refer someone in that condition to a psychotherapist?
To a psychotherapy, but at the same time, we also have to deal with the physical body. Like when you have depression, we know very well that you may experience issues such as insomnia, and so you may need some medications to address certain symptoms such as insomnia and panic attacks. So that's where we recommend you to have like chamomile tea, the catnip, so that it calms you down.
Okay. Thank you so much for this episode of Sip and Tip, where we were discussing about what your job is as a homeopathic practitioner. I seem to rush that word, practitioner. Practitioner. So we are obviously going to delve deeper into other illnesses, but for now, this is where we end. So if anyone who has been suffering from mental health, or anybody who's having some of these symptoms and unsure, I hope some of that information that we've been given today will help you. And we will continue. So remember to comment below with your questions and also, maybe stories to share concerning the subject that we're discussing right now. And Richard will be here to discuss other things. So let us know some of the things that you are interested to know about. They're probably things that you think nobody talks enough about, or things that you are desperate to get information about. Make sure you comment below, and thank you so much for coming and sharing this.
You're most welcome.